essentially he is describing heaven. What does heaven look like? Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Analuia podcast. We are so glad that you decided to join us today. And as you may have seen or heard, I guess at this point, I'm running the show today, apparently. Josh wanted me to see how it went by introducing the podcast and being sort of the host today. So we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, we'll bring on Josh as a co-host today.
Hey, happy to be here. Yeah, I decided just to switch things up a little bit, get Becca the host chair and kind of see how she does. So, she is being graded, and if all of you want to submit your feedback in the comments, telling her what a wonderful job that she did or may have done, feel free to do so.
Oh, thanks. No pressure. Definitely feeling it.
Well, it's just like when you're being evaluated on your counseling techniques, so just think of it like that.
That's scary too. It's also very scary trying to talk about deep things with people and knowing someone is watching you. And
it is quite so. It reminds me of doing like live coding. So when I was at Nashville Software School getting my data analytics certification, we had to do a couple rounds of like live coding. And when somebody's like just sitting there watching you and you're trying not to focus on them, trying to focus on what the query or the problem is that they've given you to figure out, it is quite nerve-wracking because they don't say anything. It's just dead silence, and all you hear is just type, and that's it. And by the end of it, you're like, "So is that right? Oh yeah, that's right. Well, to say something."
Yeah, that would be helpful. Please tell me. Good, bad, I don't know.
So I think we've all dealt with that either in school, college, job wise. Just that that anticipation and that making you sweat while you wait and what are they thinking.
Yeah, that's so scary. So scary. Well, today we've got a really exciting topic that we are going to be diving into. We have been watching this show for a while now and really wanted to come onto the show and talk about some of the themes that we saw in it. So today we're going to be talking about Vinland Saga. And Vinland Saga is really interesting, at least from like a Christian perspective, for many reasons, which we will talk about, I'm sure, on today's episode. But also because of how they portray Christianity in the show. So the whole premise of the show is it's set in Anglican times, in the Anglo-Saxon times, specifically in the invasion of Denmark. Denmark was invading England at the time in like 900 or 1000 AD, roughly is the general time frame that we're looking at here. I think it was like 1000. I think it was 1000 AD, pretty specifically. But did you find, Josh, when it was?
Looking at it,
I'm almost positive that's when it is. It's before 1066, which is when William the Conqueror came in and united all the tribes of England and kind of became known as the first king of England, really, even though England had many, many kings.
Right. So according to a quick Google search, it's in England, so you are right.
Yeah.
And it's in 1013 AD is where it starts.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's all around that time. It covers, the first season covers a span of 10 years though. So it's quite a long time. But we have this kid, the main character. His name is Thorfinn. Forgot there for a second. His name is Thorfinn, and he's originally from Iceland, the Iceland area. and things happen in his life. He ends up witnessing his dad dying, and he has now, at 6 years old, may I just say, still baffles me. 6 years old, he witnesses his dad die, and the guy who killed him, this little 6-year-old kid, now says he's out for vengeance, and his whole mission in life is to kill this guy. His name is Askeladd. And so he goes on this mission. He figures out how to fight, and it's just his story of figuring out how to fight and going into these battles. And there's political intrigue that happens along the way, and you get Denmark invading into England and going on that conquest, and what is that like for him. But basically his life is consumed with this revenge. And then inside season 2, things, they take a massive turn. And then it's a little bit more of life on a farm, because Thorfinn has been sold into slavery, and he's rejecting, or trying to reject, that life of revenge. And he meets some awesome people on the way and makes a best friend who is a brother in arms. And it's on their journey to find peace and redemption. And that is the very broad overview of Vinland Saga and what happens. Would you have anything to add to that, Josh?
Yeah, the comparison between the two seasons is like night and day. It
Mm-hmm.
is a stark difference. Season one, we have all this brutal fighting, killing, political intrigue, as Becky just mentioned, and then we get to see more of what I would like to call the humanistic side in season two, where it's life on a farm. Thorfinn gets a friend called Einar, and they're fighting for their freedom together. And it's just good to see those two pieces come together, because when we first saw Vinland Saga, I don't know if it was just the season that we were in, or if we just weren't that interested. But we started on Netflix. I think we got through maybe a couple episodes, but it just didn't really grab us. And then Rebecca, you said, hey, we should go ahead and pick it up again. So I'm like, I mean, we got other things to watch, but I mean, sure, why not? And I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad that we did it on Netflix, because I didn't know this. Apparently, the not only the sub and dub, that's completely different from Crunchyroll, because I listened to an episode from both providers, and let's just say I like the Netflix dub a lot better. um,
I didn't
but
know they were different. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, near die. So I guess Netflix uses a different licensing for a dubcast.
Hmm.
So I wasn't aware of that. I just thought it was the same.
Yeah, I would have
So
assumed so as well.
that makes me think that they do that for other shows that are on Crunchyroll that have also been licensed to Netflix, because Zom 100 is also on Netflix. So I don't know if that's the same dubcast or that's different.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Did it have, when you watched it, did it have a different feeling to it?
It did. The emotion of like a cry or a yell or a powerful inspirational speech needs to have the same grapple for me in Japanese when it's translated to English. I know it's not going to be 100%, but at least like 75, 80, 90. I didn't get that from the dub on Crunchyroll. It just didn't hit the same. But the dub on Netflix, I could tell it was an even split for me personally. Others may disagree, but for me personally, it was an even split when doing that transition from Japanese to English.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm okay too, even if it's not like exactly translated
Mm,
from Japanese into English
right.
or other languages.
And I think that's what Crunchyroll like did. They in their dub, they were trying to lighten that shit like word for word in the dub. Where in Netflix's sorry, in the sub, where Netflix's sub to dub, the English had a bit more leeway. They changed a few things, and yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it seems like to make it have more of an impact specifically for an English speaking audience.
And the dialect, it just felt more natural that way.
Yeah, the way that they talked, I really enjoyed it. And you're right. When we first started this, I don't know what was exactly going on, but we didn't really pick it up quite as quickly as I thought we would. It was like, oh, this is interesting, this is good, and it was just like episode after episode, it was just fighting, fighting, fighting. And it was kind of like, okay, what else? What else is there? This kid is just trapped in revenge. And yeah, so it felt a little flat for a while, which I think
Mhm.
is why we put it down.
Yeah.
And but yeah, when we picked it back up again, I'm so glad that we did. Because man, it got really good. What was crazy is after we finished the first season, it said, now ends the prologue. And we were like,
It's like, my gosh,
the prologue?
24 episodes for a prologue.
That was a lot.
I can understand 6, 12 even,
Mm-hmm.
but 24?
Yeah, it
That's a long time.
was a very long time. I will say, though, I think it was needed. Like, in order to really understand Thorfinn's story, where he came from, what happened to him, like, if you didn't have that, it wouldn't make the second season as good, you know? Like, yeah, they could have done flashbacks and all of that, but it's just not the same, I think. So I am glad that they really took some time. Because even when, you meet the king again, um, what was his name? King
Canute.
Canute. Yes, Canute. King Canute.
Okay, when we first saw him, I thought he was a girl.
Oh, I really did
Like,
too.
oh,
The
he's
way
a,
they drew him and
yeah, yeah.
everything.
So, oh, he's a princess or something. It's like, nope.
He's
He's
not.
just what do they call it? Pretty boy.
Is a very feminine man. Yeah. He grows up to be not quite as feminine
Right, yeah.
in the second season when we see him. But yeah, he's interesting. So that kind of leads us into our first topic of what we wanted to talk about today. And that is the idea of redemption and particularly Thorfinn's struggle for redemption. What does that feel like being, he was so trapped in revenge. That was literally all he did, all he thought about for 10 years, just angry, so angry, um, all the time.
Well, yeah, because he's just hell bent on, killing Askeladd, where he's just, it says it repeatedly, I'll kill you, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And Askeladd just blows off his like, kid, you're not gonna do it.
His words have a different weight to them when you realize Thorfinn was 6 years
Yes,
old.
right.
6. I mean, man, yeah, we've got some friends who have a little boy who's 5 or 6, something like that. And I just keep picturing him as Thorfinn. Like, what if he went through that? Like, no, no, there's no way. No wonder he was a bitter person. And look at his role models during that time of
Mm.
his life. Mm.
Well, and you have to think that Askeladd is literally traveling with the enemy. Thorfinn goes with them and fights in these battles, and on the side is like, you better sleep with one eye open.
Yeah, Askeladd and they have such an interesting relationship. Um, this idea of revenge, wanting revenge, and focusing so much on him. I mean, for 10 years, Thorfinn knew Askeladd longer than he knew his own father. And Askeladd really became a father figure for Thorfinn. And, out of all of the craziness that he went through, all of the people that he killed, Thorfinn, as we see in season 2, his struggle for redemption, he had killed so many people. One of my favorite scenes from season 2 is where Thorfinn is in a dream and Askeladd is there, and Thorfinn had like fallen down this cavity, I suppose, this cavern in the earth, and he's just hanging there above this scene that
Oh
looks like
yeah,
something
yeah.
out of a Greek tragedy. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's crazy looking. Um, but it's all of the warriors fighting. He sees everybody that he knew that he fought with down on the ground, and they just continue to kill each other over and over and over again. And Askeladd was talking with him, and just saying, "Are you going to be a true warrior?" And it's this idea of what is a true warrior. And as he's hanging there, he, this like pile of people continue to go on top of each other and grab him by the feet and are holding on to Thorfinn. And those are all of the people that he had killed throughout his life. And that is his burden to bear, the weight of his sin, if you will. He is so conflicted. He feels so burdened by all of the people that he has killed, and he wants so badly to be redeemed. And so he's got these questions inside of himself of, I've killed all these people, can I be redeemed? Can I be a good person? Or am I just doomed to hell forever? And that plagues him so much in season 2.
When we're observing that scene when he's just in that crack on the cliff and people are, his past lives that he's taken are just, I mean, it was really, I mean, how terrifying with it. That's like your worst nightmare. That's literally like your sins finding you out, kind of, brought to life, but kind of being personified.
Yeah,
And
it almost reminds me of A Christmas Carol,
oh
where
yeah,
Marley has all of those chains
change,
and
yeah,
boxes and
yeah.
things.
Hmm. For me, when I'm watching this, like Thorfinn is trying to avenge his father, but we don't really get to that redemption aspect until season two.
Right.
I think what I would like to delve into is kind of the representation of Christians
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
season one. So we hear a lot of like biblical parallels, and Christians are seen as not the most popular group, let's just say. They're slaughtered, they're killed, and again, all this did happen historically. Like Vikings came in, they pillaged and tore people out from their houses, just stabbed them, and it was awful. I don't know if it was Askeladd or another character that said something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, those Christians. Oh, he's talking about something. Only the sword shuts him up."
Yeah, they're the one Christian in season 1 that we really get to spend a lot of time with is characterized as a drunk.
Oh, the priest.
The priest, yeah, he's
Yeah.
which happened often, like historically. There's a really interesting podcast that I've listened to. I put it down for a while, but it's called oh my gosh, the British History Podcast, I think. Yeah, it's literally just the British History Podcast. Really interesting. I started at the beginning, which woo is long. And this started in like, really early. Anyway, but they were talking about how um that really happened in um in history. There were a lot of drunk monks. There's another one that I listened to. It's called Tasting History. So good. I love that channel. It's on YouTube. Anyway, so he goes through making dishes and things. Anyway, he talked about the drunk monks and why it was such a problem, and they tried to find ways around everything. But yeah, that's pretty much the representation we have of Christianity is that guy. He has some interesting existential conversations though with uh is it I think Canute, either that or Thorfinn. Thorfinn doesn't really listen very much.
He had one goal in mind. He wasn't listening to nothing else.
Yeah, and King Canute, he or Prince Canute as he was at the time, he also professed to be a believer in Christianity. And as time went on, well, he's interesting. Um,
And I think one thing to point out here is this is historical fiction, so there are
yes,
facets of accuracy,
right.
but it is, I would say, mostly fiction.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, mostly fiction. It's certainly the whole. It could have happened.
Hmm.
It could have happened, but yeah, it's historical elements that are woven in. I saw an interesting video about King Canute and what actually happened with him. And I mean, everything was pretty accurate. They did say towards the end of his life, after all the fighting and everything, he turned back to Christianity to try to atone for all of his sins, if you will, of killing people. And one of the big fights in season two was where King Canute tries to come in and take the farm, Kettle's farm, where Thorfinn and Einar are slaves at this farm. And that was the big turning point. And finally, Thorfinn got to talk with him, uh, and Canute finally he went away. He went home. So it's like, that's good. Good that he ended all of that. But it was like his way of, historically anyway, they say that his way of atoning for the war was to dig into Christianity and go all in with that again. But yeah, Christianity is not really seen and interesting seen in a positive light. Even Canute, because he is professed to be a Christian, he goes off and continues terrible, bloody wars. Well, that's not a great representation of Christ. And yeah, all of them have problems.
And what you said about, atoning for your sins, this leads us right into kind of, where we had a lot of discussions between you and I, season 2 of Vinland Saga. That is where we are introduced to a character named Einar, who has also been sold into slavery. And just like seeing like their way onto the land of where they're going to be sold, and I mean, a lot of people they don't make it. Like a lot of the people that they catch and are going to sell, like half of them like died on the way there.
The conditions are not great. We're
And
not.
there's a scene where like Einar just has like this look of shock on his face because this, I guess, woman dies, and his two men just carry her and like throw out the boat. It's,
She wasn't even dead yet.
yeah, that she was going to die.
She was sick and was going to die.
Yeah, and he's like, how could you do that? She's lying dead. She's still breathing.
Mhm.
It's like she's gonna die anyway. Might as well make it quicker.
Yeah. Less opportunity for the other slaves to die was their thinking.
Well, yeah, they catch like the disease or the illness or whatnot.
Hmm.
And when Anar gets to the place where he's being sold, he doesn't get sold for like, a bit, because people are like, well, I mean, he's big and burly, can he really do, all that I need to do for my land, or what chores I need done. And then we see Leif Erikson, where we don't really know who he is yet, until a few episodes down the road, where he's looking for a slave named Thorfinn. And at this point, Einar doesn't know who Thorfinn is. He hasn't met him. Um,
He's
and
about to.
yeah, and we don't know who's him. We think Thorfinn is still off, fighting and whatnot. But we come to learn that the person who bought Einar asked for a young man to come out, and lo and behold, is Thorfinn, and he's grown up.
Yes, he definitely grew up quite a bit. I think in season two, he is closer to 20. Is
I
that
would say
right?
20, mid 20s.
Something like that.
So, what was your overall reaction and feelings towards season 2 versus season 1?
Mm. Season two felt like a breath of fresh air. You know, season one was so dark and
Mm,
angsty and um so much that was happening during all of that time. And it was just like, oh my gosh, when is this poor kid going to catch a break? When is he
right,
going to let go of the
right.
revenge and the anger and all of this? And then season two comes and it's like, whoa,
Yeah,
Who are you?
we will get this reprieve almost that we all needed,
Yeah,
including
it
the
was
characters.
right. Yeah, it was like a slice of life all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Um, but that was such a nice change of pace, I think, in the show.
yeah, I would agree along the same lines. Again, we've gotten deeper and deeper into Thorfinn's revenge, his ideas, this brutality of the war and the Vikings, and then we switch gears almost like night and day, and it's like, oh, okay, people on a farm, friendships being made, people getting to know one another, some romance being blossomed. So it was really nice to have that rest for a bit.
Yeah, before more fighting started.
Yes.
So, one of the big concepts in the whole both seasons, the whole show, is this pursuit of a higher calling or a pursuit of heaven, a better place. And it's just so beautiful throughout the show. You know, there's even in season one, before Thorfinn goes off to become a warrior, there's this slave that ends up, like, very first episode, a slave runs away from his master and ends up staying at Thorfinn's house, and Thorfinn doesn't quite understand it. Like, he's a slave, why don't we just send him back? And his dad is like, no, we need to try to nurse this guy back to health and feed him, and all of this. And it just all kind of comes full circle, though, and begins to understand why, like, just because this person was a slave doesn't mean they're a bad person. Like, you don't know their full circumstance. And the theme of slavery is really all throughout the show, to the point where, like we've been talking about, Thorfinn and Einar are both sold into slavery. You can have good masters and you can have bad masters.
And they got very lucky with a good
They got
master.
very lucky.
He basically just said, "Hey, I'm gonna let you, work my field and do what you need to do, and essentially you grow the crops, we sell them, make a profit, and you basically get to buy back your freedom."
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that they used this imagery and of or allegories of slaves and slavery. So often the Bible talks about being slaves and being set free from slavery, and that Jesus purchased us with the sacrifice of his blood. And, that was the atonement. That is how we were purchased, just like Einar and Thorfinn were purchased, not with blood, obviously. Although,
I mean, again, there's a lot of bloodshed.
that's why I paused. There was a lot of bloodshed during that whole end fighting scene. Um, but yeah, it's so before they leave, though, um, they talk about, well, even in the beginning of the show, they talked about Vinland and this idea of a perfect world that could be shaped and molded into something beautiful. That was why Thorfinn and Thorfinn's mom and dad actually left the mainland and got out of all the fighting, was because they wanted to build their own Vinland, essentially. And that dream was then passed along to Thorfinn.
And we'll get to this next to last episode in season 2, where there's just this very moving emotional speech made by Thorfinn. I think it's like the really most encouraging part of season 2, where he's a character named Einhard, a female character who in our wanted to develop a relationship with, but unfortunately she had died through unfortunate circumstances. And Thorfinn goes into this kind of like monologue.
Say to everyone that death isn't the only way to be saved. That there is a place here on Earth. A place that is more appealing than death. I must show them. in this cruel world we live in. That's what we want! All of us! That's all we've ever wanted!
Heaven on earth, essentially. A place where slaves and wars don't exist. A place across the ocean.
Yeah, so he's like, essentially, he is describing heaven. You know, what does heaven look like? And, you know, it reminds me of in Revelation where it says, you know, at that time every tear will be wiped away. There will be no crying. It's the idea of the Jewish idea of shalom. And shalom is peace, but it's so much more than just peace. It is like the perfect will of God that comes into being. And they use it as like a greeting, shalom to you and to your house. It's the waiting for the Lord to come. And that is what shalom is. And there's so much more like deep meaning in that word, but that is what Thorfinn is seeking, is that shalom, that peace. It's really beautiful the way that they capture it. You're right, Josh, that speech that Thorfinn makes is amazing.
I think I'll rewatch that scene, like, just because it's so impactful and brings a little bit of tear to my eye.
For Arnheid.
For Arnheid.
That I really enjoyed that. I honestly enjoyed this series a lot more than I thought I would, because when I first heard it, I was like, oh, Vikings and all that stuff. I'm not really into that. Still not into it, but I love the whole story, the whole concept, and I've loved the different analogies and themes we've been able to pull out of this as well. One other thing that we did, like right before we came up to record, is we listened to all of the openings and endings to this series, and I know that other anime openings and endings kind of pull out the general themes and the general message of the show, or at least I like to think they do, but we don't know because
we can't understand Japanese.
I mean, we can turn on the subtitles and read it, but I mean, who wants to do that? But most of the songs that were used for Vinland Saga, their openings and endings, were mainly in English, with the exception of a couple. There's a playlist with all the endings and openings. We'll link that in the description for you guys to check out, so you guys can see the lyrics and how poignant and how on point that they are with the show.
Right, exactly. So I just remembered something really interesting about the show too. They actually read scripture.
Yes.
In the show. There's a point on the farm where this character named Snake.
Yes.
He is reading, he's a farmhand, and he's reading to the old master is his name. And Thorfinn and Einar and what was her name? Arnheid. They were all outside listening to Snake read the Bible. And they were reading, oh my gosh, what were they reading? It was in Matthew, I think. And it was talking about redemption and like that Jesus came to redeem those who have been lost. And Thorfinn is fascinated with Snake reading the scripture. And it's like he wanted to hear more. And
yeah, he's sitting there, he's like, oh, Jesus sounds like a pretty cool dude.
yeah. Snake he even made that comment. And it's just like, man, Thorfinn is so like primed and ready to receive the gospel. It came so close to doing that. And, you know, he just didn't have someone to come alongside him. And I wonder if the show is going to go any deeper into the themes of Christianity in it. I don't know if they will or not.
I mean, I feel that you can't talk about Vinland Saga again at the stage where it is now, or we left off, without bringing some parallels of Christianity, because I think it was, whether intentional or not, the influences are there, certainly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the very basic plot, right, of the whole show is Thorfinn was deep in sin and
Yeah.
just, killing and murdering and all of these horrible, awful things, and then has now rejected it all. So much so that even when he was trying to get in front of King Canute and tell him, hey, you stop this war, this is pointless. There was a scene where he's trying to get through all of the guards, I guess, the soldiers, and he bet against him, or he bet on himself to say that Thorfinn could withstand 100 punches by this like big
Oh,
burly dude.
yes.
And man, he got through it. To me, it reminded me of where Jesus says to turn the other cheek. And if someone hits you, turn the other cheek, let him do it again, for the sake of peace and reconciliation. And that's what Thorfinn was doing. He let this guy, and you know what? These guys were mean, ruthless, violent people. And by the end of those 100 punches, I mean, that 100 punch was barely it was barely a tap. Those guys respected Thorfinn
Oh,
for just
absolutely.
taking a beating, basically. And there's something to be said about that, something to be said about that, of peace over violence.
And that's what Thorfinn is all about. Even when he goes to King Canute to try to, um, convince him to, stop the war and everything. And he's like, and what if I don't? So, well, then I'll run away.
Yeah. Yeah. That was so unexpected.
Yeah.
Because Canute was like prepared for a fight. And he's like, well, I'll just run away. He was like, run away?
Run away?
What
do
do you mean run away?
And exactly, just laughs at the idea.
Yeah. It's crazy, particularly because he knew Thorfinn when he was a little pistol, to say the least, and would just go off and slice anybody's head off for looking at him wrong. And it's so different, It's like, honestly, Thorfinn's season 1 and season 2 are like before Christ and after Christ. It
Oh,
is that
yeah.
major of a difference.
I would definitely agree with that analogy right there.
Mm-hmm. So those are all of our thoughts, at this point, about Vinland Saga. There's so much more that we could get into, but tell us in the comments, engage with us on social media. Tell us what you think about this show. Is there anything that we missed? I'm sure there are many things that we missed, but we would love to hear what you thought of the show, and perhaps we have inspired you to watch the show yourself. So, Josh, what would you give the show 1 out of 10?
1 out of 10, I would say 6 out of 10.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, 7.5. Yeah, I'll go with 7.5. I really liked it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite show, but I was entertained. I was really engrossed in the story. But yeah, so 7.5 out of 10.
I have been thinking a lot about this show. It was great art, great story. I think I'd have to be pretty high up there, like an 8 or a 9 for me personally. But I also love history. I love this time period, the Anglo-Saxon time period. Really interesting. So yeah, I would say it's one of those shows that's stayed with me and lingers. And to me,
and those are the
that
best because it
yeah.
causes you to think about it a bit.
Yeah.
And just gets you more excited about it, and kind of like wants to make you like delve deeper into like the behind the story and the history of all of it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I definitely went I went and did some research about Canute and what he was like, and yeah, that was really fun. Um so any other lingering thoughts that you have, Josh?
No, that is it. Also in the comments, tell us how Rebecca did as the host. If we get some good feedback, this may become a regular thing. We may trade off here and there. But Becca, you know what to do.
Yeah, so I don't remember how you usually end this,
Until next time.
except oh, that's right. Until next time, keep those halos shiny and stay holy, my friends.